I'm Karen Domino. I'm chair of the Washington Medical Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thanks for putting up with us being a few minutes late. I think we've all had our little challenges on our Zoom meetings and other virtual meetings this morning. The first thing I'd like to do is to allow period time for the public comment. And the public will have an opportunity to provide comments. If you would like to comment, please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Please identify yourself and who you represent, and if applicable, when the chair opens the floor for public comment. If you would prefer to submit written comments, send them to amelia.boyd@wmc.wa.gov by January 18th, which was yesterday, 2024. Now, the first one is Miss Amelia Boyd will be reading comments from a member of the public into the record.
Thank you, Dr. Domino. So we have a couple of written comments that have requested that we read them into the record today. So I will be reading those. They are also in the packet and they will be on the screen. So this one is from Lynn Bergeron. I request this letter be read into the record at your next meeting of your policy committee. I did let them know that it would be read into the record at the business meeting. I am angered by what you're up to. First, your witch hunt for health practitioners who do not toe the party line is appalling. With the ever-increasing toxic load we're all exposed to, we desperately need these doctors and alternative options they offer, not force on us. We're not a bunch of dummies that need mommy and daddy government to protect us. We can make our own healthcare choices. If I choose a practitioner that aligns with my beliefs, that means I've already rejected the medicine you want to limit us to. Second, you are an unelected and unaccountable body, part of the monstrous administrative state and the cancerous growth of government. We have no way to oust you on election day should we not like how you're spending taxpayer monies. Sweet for you, no recourse for us. Third, you're wrong. You are condemning good doctors based on outdated dictates from so-called authorities, also part of the administrative state. You claim to take your marching orders from, not to mention bad science and manipulated data. You don't even seem to know what the CDC and FDA are currently saying. They're singing a different tune than 2 and 3 years ago. I doubt you can be ignorant of the truth at this point in the game. I think you know what you're doing, choosing to act in service to the deep state. You're certainly not helping the people you're supposed to serve, or perhaps you have been brainwashed, bribed, or blackmailed, all possibilities, in which case, if you can't do the right thing, you should simply resign before you find yourselves on the wrong side of history at the eventual reckoning that will come. And then the next one we have is from Tom Vandersice. And they say, here's my 22-year summary of things I have observed. Any questions, please contact me. I'm a retired engineer from the nuclear salons industry where I held a top secret clearance for 25 years. My career was terminated by a doctor who fractured a 4-level bone grafted fusion on July 8th, 2002. In the ensuing 22 years, pain management was provided by hospitals and clinics. During this time, I have noticed areas of pain management that I believe need attention to improve doctor-patient outcomes. In 2017, suffered a subacute fracture caused by an inadequately trained CT scan tech. No pain medication was given for this injury, and the DOH investigators did not interview the tech who caused this injury, nor her supervisor, who was in the room at the time of the fracture. Complicating this matter is that there are no means to seek relief. The solution may be to establish a formal line of communication from the patient to the WMC to resolve complaints in real time. It would also be advantageous to provide more in-depth CME and pain management education for pain practitioners. 2 hospitals, one in Vancouver, the other in Spokane, admitted they had no training in pain management. A Spokane ER doctor and a palliative care provider will not provide adequate pain management for fear of losing their licenses. And since there is expected personnel turnover, it may be advisable to the DOH to once again send clarification regarding no opioid prescribing limits, similar to the September 12, 2019 letter. It should also be noted that a clinic in Lewiston failed to provide help despite sending at least a dozen messages, phone calls. Subsequent to this, my Spokane PCP called 911, as did an urgent care doctor in Vancouver, Washington. As you can see from what has been described, there are a number of areas that need improvement. It is my opinion also that some doctors are in pain management for financial gain only. Finally, the hiring process should include a thorough background check for opioid prescribing doctors. They are humans too. Thank you for my hospital bed in severe pain. And then this last part is an addendum that he sent in. I was advised by an orthopedist while I was hospitalized that my left leg needed to be amputated because of a Spokane Hospital wound clinic oversight. And although while hospitalized, I reported 9 to 10 level pain, and the hospitalist prescribed Tylenol upon leaving.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd, for reading the comments, and thank you to our two members and citizens of our state for providing this important feedback to our commission. I would like to see if there are any additional comments from the public. There is a hand raised, I see.
Yes, it is Bob Rennells. Let me unmute his microphone. He should be able to unmute himself and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Good morning. Thanks for having public comment. My name is Bob Runnels. I'm a director with Informed Choice Washington. I'm speaking on the topic of doctors' licenses being challenged after the WMC suddenly applied the Federation of State Medical Boards letter issued during a pandemic that threatened disciplinary action if doctors perform their jobs contrary to the one standard of care declared by the CDC. The notice provided by the WMC is self-contradictory. It begins with the WMC position on COVID-19 prevention and treatment is that COVID-19 is a disease process like other disease processes. End quote. But every authority on the matter labeled SARS-CoV-19 as a novel. Therefore, COVID, the disease, needs doctors to bring to bear all available information to treat a novel disease. It is disingenuous that the WMC would use a notice from the FSMB and as a new criteria by which to enforce its licenses. It is egregious that the WMC is harassing doctors with the policy not properly passed, based on a letter from a non-government group that you are not beholden to, yet seem to be. As a state-level commission, we look to you to protect us from bad federal policies. You should drop any harassing investigations and actions against licensees who are using other resources to help in this novel pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other public comments?
Doesn't appear to be. There are no other hands raised.
Okay, given no other hands raised, that will conclude the public comment session of the meeting. We'll next move on to the executive session. Today is January 19th, 2024, and the time is, according to the computer, 9:13 a.m. The commission will now meet in executive session to discuss a request from the Department of Justice as allowed by WC RCW 42.30.110 parentheses 1 parentheses G. The commission will be in the executive session until, say, 9:30 a.m. At the beginning of the session, anyway, so that's, I think we can move into executive session now, Ms.
I'm
Boyd?
working on putting you into rooms. Hold, please. Dr. Domino, you should have gotten a notice that you were moved into a room, but hold on.
I'll look in Outlook. I didn't see it just come on this, but
Nope, it should have just popped up. It should be doing it now.
Amelia, I have one that says join room at the top of the, like at the banner. Is that what we're
Mhm.
supposed to hit?
Yep, click on that, please.
Hello?
We can hear you, whoever's on the phone.
Oh, it's Dr. D'Souza. I'm just on call-in, so I can't see anything.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Let me get you switched over to the breakout room. Hold on just a moment.
Hi, Amelia. We're coming back in.
Thank you.
Kyle, you seamlessly popped back into the regular meeting. I did not see how to do that. Just FYI.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. I left and rejoined.
Correct. That's what I did as well. That's why Teams is pretty challenging.
So Dr. Domino, earlier before we started the public comment, the actual public comment script wasn't read. Do you have access to that? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
I'll unmute myself. I read, if you would like to comment, please limit your comments to 2 minutes. I didn't have the other script. I just used what was in the business meeting script. Do you know what I mean? And in the comments on the business meeting, that's what I read.
Oh, on the agenda. Okay.
On the agenda.
So I will.
Because I know there's, it's like now begins the business meeting. We
Mhm.
take comments from the public, but I didn't see that on that. And I don't, you may have sent it to me, but I haven't checked the Department of Health email for yesterday.
Okay.
Maybe
so
Wednesday. Yeah.
let me send you that real quick because I think we need to read it into the record. Hold on just a moment. Hopefully you just got that in a Teams message from me.
I'm trying to open it. It's in the chat. Okay. Yeah. This one I didn't have. So.
Yeah, if you could just read that into the.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it so it looks, I can see when I open it up, click on it, you can't see it. Uh, It's okay. I'll start and read this. We will now begin the portion of the business meeting to take public comment. The purpose is to allow members of the public to directly address the commission on issues of public concern. Please refrain from providing comments on pending or open investigations or disciplinary cases. We will not be answering questions or responding. Staff will be available after the meeting to answer your questions. Please understand that although the time period for comment during the business meeting is limited, the public can attend and provide comment at commission committee meetings. The public can also contact staff during normal business hours. We welcome written comments as well. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to speak. When you comment, please state your name and who you represent. Would anyone like to comment at this time? In conclusion, at the end of the meeting, this concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. I want to thank you all for your comments. Again, you may provide written comments at any time.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see it. So I knew it wasn't full, but anyway. All right, so we can now get back to our general meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Boyd?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next part of the meeting is the chair report. Just wanted to really thank the commission for all the work you're doing and all the commission members. Especially you see later in the session, see all the work done on our strategic plan, and listen after a result of our meeting that we had. Mr. Kareninen, myself, and Mr. Matthews had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. for a meeting earlier this week, and it was on artificial intelligence in medicine. And it was put on by the Federation of State Medical Boards. And it was very fascinating meeting. And I think we have a lot to think about, both in terms of the changes we'll see over the next 5+ years. The speed may be very quick in uptake, both of generative artificial intelligence as well as artificial intelligence used to make recommendations for diagnosis and treatment of various medical conditions, as well as artificial intelligence used in devices. What was interesting to me is it is very complex, number one. Number two, really as a physician or a physician assistant, we are totally inadequately educated in this area. And there's a lot of things that are a black box that we don't really understand what went into it. I think as someone who's works on practice guidelines and in that where systematic reviews and meta-analyses are prioritized, a lot of these AI things, we have no idea what literature goes in. In fact, all literature may go in. The entire internet may go into it. I heard someone say there, one of the tech people. And it may prioritize a case report in a poor journal or just something on the web that's not scientific, the same way it may prioritize treatments for conditions that have been, in guidelines and meta-analyses have been performed. So we're going to talk, what are our goals? I think Mr. Krennan and I and Mr. Matthews and I were talking about that we really need education in this area. And so we're hoping to bring some back of the information we learned back to you. Anyway, that's really just wanted to comment about that wonderful opportunity and the great work our staff is doing as well. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And these are considered routine agency matters and will be approved by a single motion without discussion. If separate discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular business agenda. There were two items here. One is 4.1 minutes, the approval of the October 20th, 2023 business meeting minutes, and item 4.2, which is approval of the January 19th, today's 2024 business meeting agenda. Can I have a motion to recommend approval of these documents?
So moved.
Second, please just say, I can't see everybody. Yep, I see a hand. Yeah. And all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to approving these two documents? Okay, with that and no opposals, we will approve those our consent agenda documents. Now we'll move on to new business. It's called the petition for declaratory order. It looks like Mr. Farrell will present this. This was on pages 17 to 18 of your business meeting agenda packet.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Mike Farrell here. So I'm here to present a petition for a declaratory order by one of our licensees. So one of our licensees is asking you to issue a document declaring certain things. So you're probably wondering, what is a declaratory order? So a declaratory order is an order issued by an agency that states how an agency is to apply a rule, a statute, or other law to a specific circumstances. any resident, any citizen can ask any agency to issue a declaratory order on how their law will affect them. So there's several requirements that a petitioner must meet to get an agency to issue a declaratory order, and two of them are significant in this case. One is that there must be uncertainty necessitating a resolution in the case. And two, there must be, the uncertainty has to adversely affect the petitioner. So the commission can issue a declaratory order, or it can decline to issue a declaratory order. In this case, as you can see from the petition at pages 17 and 18, this licensee is under investigation by the commission, and a commission investigator sent him a letter asking for records of the relevant patient. And the licensee is responding by asking for authority for conducting the investigation. So he's asking the commission to declare that the commission has legal jurisdiction and standing to request the licensee's medical records of the patient before he sends the records. He's asking for a detailed account that substantiates the existence of a complaint that necessitates the release of the requested medical records. The licensee is asking for assurance that the request adheres to all pertinent privacy laws, and a citation of legal authority that supports the commission's request. And finally, he asks for the commission to issue an order to confirm the commission's authority to conduct the investigation. So we have occasionally a licensee or his attorney will ask us for statutory authority to do what we're doing. And we always provide that information. In fact, that's why our letters of cooperation contain statutory authority, very clear statutory authority for the commission to investigate complaints and to request medical records. And so that was done in this case. This licensee is using a different method. He's using a statute in the Administrative Procedures Act, which allows an agency to issue a declaratory order. In this case, because there's no uncertainty here, the law is very clear about the commission's authority in all aspects of their request in the letter of cooperation that was sent. And because the commission abides by all state and federal privacy laws, I would recommend declining to issue this declaratory order.
Is there any comment or discussion? I know I certainly not sure I really understand everything. Who there, Mr. Rogers, I see you number one.
I just quickly comment that this is part of their licensing, and these are statutory obligations they have. It's in the law. I move that we decline to offer any order in response to this.
Mr. Lopez has his hand raised.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Farrell. So it is my my impression that when there's an order for and a letter sent to the respondent, it seems very clear to me as to the statutory and standards as to why it is that we have the authority to do so, to request the beginning of an investigation. So, and you've cleared up a little bit more as to how that process works. So I support not submitting a declaratory order.
Dr. Trescott, I saw your hand raised.
Dr. Domino, just sorry to interrupt. This is a point of order. I believe there's a motion on the floor that needs to be seconded.
I'll second.
I second.
Thank you.
Okay, then Dr. Trescott, you have further question, discussion?
Yes, I'm not understanding why we have to refuse it or deny it, why we wouldn't just send something that affirms it. I'm just not sure why we have to take that step. Why do we not, I mean, we obviously have the authority. Why do we have to deny to respond to this request?
Well, I'd invite Heather Carter to comment, but I'll first say that you could issue a declaratory order acceding to the request. I think it sets a bad precedent because you'll receive further requests in the future, and I will have to come to your business. Someone will come to your business meetings and take up your time to have the commission declare something that is very clear. Also, the requirement is that there be uncertainty. That's a requirement to even petition. So since there's no uncertainty, I think declining to issue a declaratory order, which will take up some staff time, is the better course.
And when we decline, do we explain our
Yes.
our declining?
Yes. So I've drafted a letter to the licensee that when you, and I'll run it by, I've already run it by the executive director and our AAG advisor. I want to add though too that I forgot to mention, there's a statute governing declaratory orders, but there's a DOH rule that says when you file a declaratory order, a petition for a declaratory order, it must meet a certain format and be filed with the adjudicative service unit. So there's a way to do it that he didn't comply with, and I think that should be part of the letter as well.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing no other hands raised, we have the motion to deny this order and a second. So all in favor of denying it, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to this, denying it? Please raise your hand or say aye. Hearing none, we've agreed to deny this declaratory order.
Thank you.
Right, we'll now move on to old business. Number 7.1 is committee and work group reports. There are a number of committee work groups and work groups. You've seen them in your packet. On page 20 is a whole list of these groups. There were some written reports, a couple, those small reports on page 19. Are there any reports that anyone from any of these committees or work groups like to present? Please raise your hand electronically so we can see it if you do. Seeing no one who wants to say anything else from these committees or work groups, we will move on to agenda item 7.2, the rulemaking activities. This is an update in action. The rules progress report is provided on page 21. And this report is the request to rescind collaborative drug therapy agreement rulemaking. And it is on page 24 to 25. Mr. Karenanen, are you presenting this or who is?
Nope, that would be me, Dr. Domino. Thank you. When the commission engages in rulemaking, there are a couple different stages. The CDTA initial stage was launched in 2020, as you see outlined in the memo that I sent to you all. There had been a little bit of work through a work group that had gone on before that. I believe the only person left over from that time period that was active in the work group was Dr. Chung. And long story short, I think we've reached a point where this rule has been open. This proposed, the CR 101 has been open for several years. And in the time that it's been open, as I note in my in the summary, we have not had any complaints, let alone authorized investigations on this topic. And that was really what had started the commission down the road of looking at doing rulemaking. For the benefit of the folks who have not been around, I did put in brief a description of how CDTAs work legally. and the expectations that are around them, or as the case may be, the lack thereof. But given the amount of time that the rule has been open, and then of course the intervening pandemic greatly changed the landscape with regard to how um, how pharmacists and pharmacy technicians work in community retail pharmacies. I thought it was appropriate to bring back to you folks to see if you want to look at potentially rescinding this rulemaking, or going back and going forward. If we do go forward, we're going to need a couple more people from the commission side to work on this. As I mentioned in my memo, we floated some draft rule language. Now, Amelia, you'll have to help me here. I believe it was 2019 through the work group process. Am I right? Thank you. As always, you are the historian here. We had floated some draft rule language that, safe to say, was not well received by at least our colleagues on the Pharmacy Commission. And I think that the larger pharmacy practice community had concerns about how it would impact their licensees. At this point, I'd invite some kind of impressions or comments from Dr. Chung, who was very active in the work group process. Dr. Chung and Micah went to a hospital, an acute care hospital, to see how CDTAs work in that setting. And I think a lot of their impressions led to the draft that exempted hospitals from the potential rule. And the rule was mostly focused on community retail pharmacy. But Dr. Chung, is there anything that you'd like to add at this point?
No, because your final points actually made the point that I was going to bring up, which is that we did work with the Pharmacy Commission, and while, of course, they would like to cover all pharmacists, retail and otherwise, they did use the argument about the importance of this practice in the hospital setting, which obviously would make some sense. And I think when we had the meeting, and again, this was several years ago, and since then we have had really no activity on this issue. The issue that we brought up wasn't so much what is happening in the hospitals, but at the retail setting where you have physicians who have these agreements where they may have, like, you know, I think somebody mentioned when Melanie was around, somebody mentioned that, you know, there was one physician who had like 800 of these. And so there was really no oversight from the physician perspective. And I think that's what made us concerned that, you know, when these agreements occur, it's kind of a, you know, carte blanche for the pharmacists to act independently without any real oversight from us. And so I think that was the key concern. Prior to my involvement, there were several other commissioners who now have rolled off who felt very strongly about this and making compelling arguments as well. So while I understand that since the pandemic, you know, there's been obviously some changes in expectations and perhaps, you know, a greater role in things like vaccines and such, I would invite those of you who are maybe closer to the action to review this a little bit more closely and see if it's still pertinent at this day and age for us to revisit and perhaps reframe the idea of how we might get some or maintain some oversight. So I think that's probably all I can say.
Do any other commissioners have any thoughts or comments about this? Again, I may not see you. Please raise your hand in the chat if I can see you. Might come up. Dr. Trescott.
I just wanted to say that if this does go to rulemaking, I'd be happy to be involved. In one of my previous hats as a medical director in a large organization, I did sign these between, and it's an integrated system with protocols and quite a bit of oversight. So I thought it was used in a very functional way in that setting. So if this does go to rulemaking, I would be happy to be involved.
So, Dr. Truscott, if I can just say, this is in rulemaking. The decision point, if there is one, for the commission at this point is whether or not you want to proceed with rulemaking. And if that's the case, then we don't need a vote. Heather, please correct me if I'm wrong. If you are open to, and there are members of the commission who wish to withdraw the authorization for rulemaking and simply kind of keep an eye on the issue in a more informal context, then it would take a motion, a second, and then a vote to withdraw the CR 101. But it's really up to the commission in terms of where you want to go with this.
Do we have further discussion? Claire, you have more to say?
Just I wanted to ask Dr. Chung what he's recommending as far as the rulemaking at this point.
Before I try to answer that, Kyle, so if this is currently in rulemaking, what would be the next step if we didn't withdraw it?
Well, that's also a question for the commission. Amelia, my inclination here, but please feel free to weigh in, would be that we need to go back to the workshop stage because it's been so long since we floated draft rule language. And as I mentioned in my memo, the feedback that we got from both the Pharmacy Commission and then the private sector part of the pharmacy practice was uniformly negative toward the rule draft that we had promulgated. And in fairness, this is an issue that was left over from Melanie. Melanie felt very strongly about needing to have some sort of rule structure that guided MDs and PAs who are entering into these agreements. There were, I think it's fair to say, a fair number of abuses that were pointed out to us. Not just the folks who had a numerable number of these agreements, but there were some other issues that we tried to address in the draft rule language. So if we were to go forward, I think, and Amelia, I'll ask for your input here as well as Heather. I think the next step, the next step, if we're not going to withdraw this, is workshops.
Correct.
So I would. So my thoughts, and I certainly don't have to take my recommendation, since some of those who have felt more strongly about this than I have rolled off. But just to again maybe point out too that there is a financial incentive for the physicians who get involved in this. That's why they have so many. And sometimes the financial incentive comes from the big pharmacy companies, not from the pharmacists themselves. And so I think there is some complexity here that I would like to point out. My recommendation would be to bring together an ad hoc group. I don't want to call it a work group necessarily, but to just revisit what the issues are and see if there is a need for us to either replace this with a different kind of rule, or is it something that we would just withdraw and then just shelve altogether? And I'm not sure if we're ready to make that decision at the moment.
Ms. Blake.
Echoing what Dr. Chung just said, I was actually at the rulemaking session where this was discussed, and I would agree with withdrawing. There has also been a push that we heard about on the medical staff side, where pharmacists were looking to gain privileges on a medical staff, which were not which were not welcomed in the medical staff arena. And I just think that this does need a little bit more review. And I would, in my opinion, recommend that we consider withdrawing.
Dr. Gallagher, you're next.
I guess I'd have a question for Kyle and anyone else with more experience in this. If we were to withdraw this, what is the risk of then scope creep and our ability to the more we just let this go forward, how does that stop us in the future from then trying to do rulemaking? I think it would make it that much harder.
If I can answer that, Dr. Gallinger, I will. I think that we've seen a number of issues with regard to the concept of scope creep. There is a bill that has been floated and introduced this session that would allow pharmacists to have prescriptive authority. For instance, not unfettered, except subject to rulemaking by the Pharmacy Commission. And so there are no statutory guidelines, there are no requirements regarding clinical experience or training on assessing and diagnosing patients. And so we've seen this in a couple different arenas. I think at the last business meeting, I did talk with you folks, and we did file a comment on the Sunrise review for increasing the prescriptive authority of naturopathic physicians. And there's also a bill out there at the moment that has been introduced to allow psychologists some level of prescriptive authority. And so I do think that that is a real concern in the kind of writ large. This rulemaking was originally started when a couple members of the Pharmacy Commission staff went to Melanie and talked to her and gave her examples of some of the CDTAs that they were seeing during their regular investigations and inspections of pharmacies. And then we did a quick report, and it turns out that there are a ton of collaborative drug therapy agreements, some of which are quite narrow, some of which are quite broad. There have been abuses. I'll say abuses. I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else of CDTAs. There was an instance where there was an MD who had passed away, and yet his signature was still finding its way onto CDTAs posthumously. And so I think that those sorts of concerns raised a good deal of concern by the commission. As I mentioned in the cover memo, there was also an Attorney General opinion request with regard to the ability of pharmacists to diagnose and assess patients under a CDTA. And the Attorney General's opinion is a bit wonky from a legal perspective, but they concluded that if the CDTA allows it, then that's fine. And so there was also some concern that was in the draft rule with how and when that diagnostic function could be permitted. And so, again, the real-time information that we had at the time that we began this process is probably about 5 years old now at this point. And so if we were to go forward, as I mentioned before, we need to do more work group and kind of get a better accurate picture. We had invited the Pharmacy Commission to have like you folks, they have a number of specialists on the commission. They have a very I think the current chair is a clinical pharmacist who practices in a hospital. At that time, the chair of the Pharmacy Commission was also a clinical pharmacist. And we had repeatedly asked the Pharmacy Commission to allow us to kind of interact and talk with a community retail pharmacist commission member. And that was that never came about. And so there are a number of steps, Dr. Gallinger, that we can take with regard to doing further work group and workshops on this issue and revising it. My question for you folks at this point is, again, whether you'd like to do that to kind of get a better idea of what the current landscape is, or whether you'd like to mothball this project entirely. And as I mentioned, this one has been kind of dormant for a while, which is why we're bringing it back to you folks for some direction.
I think
So-
watching what's going on legislatively, I think it's imperative that we not mothball this, because there's a lot that's moving forward through the legislature that this would be very timely.
Dr. Trescott, you're number one here.
Yes, I want to say this absolutely, I think, does need to be reassessed. Over these CDTA guidelines or whatever were written quite a while ago, I believe, and the emergence of PharmDs, even in the outpatient setting, has changed how pharmacists are used in the outpatient setting. And I want to say that not just in hospitals, but in large groups where team-based care is practiced, a PharmD would be on the team and play a significant role in renewal of meds, et cetera. So I think we need to look at where the new education has gone with pharmacists and how that applies not only in the hospital setting, but in the outpatient setting.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes, hi. I'd like to echo what Dr. Trescott has mentioned and further state that I know very little about this, even though I interact with pharmacists both in the hospital setting as well as in the outpatient setting. And I recognize the extension of which their practice has continued to evolve. Most of it has been very welcomed and for the benefit of the patient. So my concern here in question is always, how does the CDTA in any way potentially adversely affect or put the patient at risk? And does this whole issue support the increased, not only the benefit of a physician and a pharmacy, but my concern here is, how does it affect the patient? And frankly, I don't know any more than I know now. And so I'd like to know more about how this really affects the patient's care and the safety of prescriptive medications.
Dr. Chung?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some clarifications for the purpose of a procedural action. Just so that everyone's clear, the CDTA is already in place and had been used, and the rulemaking that we started a few years ago, 3 years ago, was to create a rule for us to be able to oversee the CDTAs from the physician perspective. And what's being asked to withdraw, to be withdrawn, is that rulemaking CR 101 proposal. So when we say we're withdrawing, we're not withdrawing the CDTA itself. We're withdrawing the request to create the rule. So what I'm hearing you guys, everyone saying, is that we either shouldn't withdraw it, or we should withdraw it and come up with something different. We're not saying we're going to abandon the CDTA issue altogether. I believe that's what I'm hearing, and I just want to clarify that so that if someone wants to make a motion, we make the right motion.
Ms. Boyd?
So I just wanted to mention that we do have an open CR 101. Our CR 101 is in the packet. It is a very broad CR 101. It's just saying that we will create new sections about CDTAs. So if you want to continue on with rulemaking, a CR 101 can be open forever. It doesn't have timelines like the CR 102 and the 103, the second and third step in the rulemaking process. So that's why it's been open so long. It's been open since 20. So you can leave it open. You can create a work group if you would like to talk about the draft language just keep in mind that everything we do with rulemaking should be transparent. And so it would be better if we would do workshops again and have those open to the public.
Hey, I just want to, your last statement, Ms. Boyd, made me a little confused. So if it's better to have workshops become open, then do we need to rescind this? Whatever it
No,
is. Yeah, no.
no.
Okay.
So it seems like there's not a consensus in terms of withdrawing the CR 101 authorization. And so, again, we don't need a vote to kind of continue here. If there are folks, and again, I'm just trying to push our meeting a little bit along. If there are folks who would like to work on this, I think what we'll do is probably reconstitute a work group. There'll be some educational materials that there's a binder that Melanie had put together back in the day. There's also the draft rule language. And then I think probably convening that group to kind of give them the initial lay of the land in terms of what we know, and then where we want to go with this, I think is probably the best path forward, unless there's a consensus that we need to withdraw, which it does not sound like there is. Amelia, are you okay with that as a non-decision?
Sure. And what I can do is I can add some resources to our rulemaking website related to this issue. That way everybody has access to them.
Okay, so Dr. Domina, I don't think we need a vote at this point. I'm just going to mark this as we are not withdrawing this, and we will work with to get a couple folks from the commission into a work group and begin the workshop process again on CDTA rulemaking. Does that sound okay?
All sounds good.
Okay.
There's one thing, Mr. Krenner, it's rules adopted here. This one, it's underneath this. It says the Washington Medical Commission has adopted WAC 246-918-195 new physician assessments and the WAC 246-919- this. Is this something that's under this, or is this a different topic?
That's just informational.
Okay.
It's a different topic.
Okay, so we don't need to discuss it? No. Okay, so our next old business is the strategic plan 2023 to 2025. Well, we're right in the middle of the plan. Ms. Bush, Director of Quality Engagement, will present this item for discussion and action.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. I'm before you today to ask for your approval of the strategic plan that is in the meeting packet. What you see is a public-facing document for our organizational goals over the next couple of years. This plan was created with your suggestions and your suggestions from the retreat, and then with additional staff input. There's also an internal document that outlines our milestones and metrics for these items that we'll share with you later during our strategic plan updates. But for now, I'm just asking for your approval so that we can officially begin working on these goals. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Do we need a vote on that, an official vote?
Yes, normally you are blessing us to move forward with executing these items.
Well, thanks for the nice work on this. It's really a beautiful document as well. Do we have a motion or to approve this document?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right, the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the nice job. Hard work. Appreciate it. All right, next thing. Policy committee work. Christine Blake, the public member and chair of the policy committee, will report on items discussed at the policy committee meeting on January 4th, 2024. The agenda was as follows. The first document is 8.1. It's called WMC rulemaking, midwifery, legend, drugs and devices. Comments from the Washington Medical Commission also there. Who would like to discuss this? Ms. Blake, you want
Thank
to
you,
talk
Dr.
about
Domino.
it?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Domino. I want to thank Dr. Kohlmeyer for working on a report for us for this meeting. I appreciate that very much. So the proposed midwifery rule changes, which were authorized by SSB 5765 regarding limited prescriptive authority for licensed midwives, went through a collaborative process at the committee. That process included review and revisions by the Midwifery Advisory Committee, led by Kathy Weed, program manager from DOH, and included WMC Commissioner Dr. Curry, who is an OB-GYN. That collaborative process included discussion and feedback from the policy committee and other stakeholders, many of which are educators and practitioners in midwifery. First, for your awareness, the WMC in December had received a letter of concern from WISMA about the inclusion of nifedipine in WAC 246834250. The focus group, which again included Dr. Curry and Kathy Weed, among others, revised the proposed language regarding nifedipine, which is noted in your packet, and it's on page 25 of the rule document. The new proposed language includes the addition of a qualifier or a limitation on the use of nifedipine. That language states that nifedipine may only be given for the indication of preterm labor pending transport. This updated language helps to ensure that, if adopted, nifedipine may be a tool in a midwife's toolbox to urgently or emergently treat preterm labor when indicated, but only within the guardrail that it may only be given pending transport to a higher level of care. Of note, that new proposed language regarding nifedipine may be especially helpful for midwives and their patients in rural communities, where accessing a higher level of care may require a long transport time. Also, please note that these proposed rule changes throughout this document include terminology that is inclusive of all pregnant and lactating patients, which is inclusive of female and transgender anatomy as well. The WMC is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion in the delivery of healthcare, and the policy committee appreciates language in the proposed rules that supports this commitment. Somewhat similarly, as word choice matters to prevent unnecessary controversy, there was a change in reference from SAB, spontaneous abortion, to miscarriage, which is accurate and generally less triggering. There's no need to vote on the adoption of these rules, nor is there any formal motion required, as these are not WMC rules. However, the WMC is statutorily tasked with providing feedback to help ensure the public safety in that regard. At this point, is there any further discussion that any commissioner wishes to share regarding the midwifery rules as presented?
I might just comment,
Dr. Curry?
if that's okay.
I can't.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. Can you hear me? I just
Yes.
want to say that this document underwent an extensive collaboration with lots of different people and stakeholders, and I think it's a well-worded document and provides a level of safety for the public that we all would want, while allowing midwives to significantly extend their scope of practice so that they can care more completely for pregnant and postpartum patients. So I think it's a very good move in a good direction. So hopefully it will get through all of its hurdles and get supported by everyone down the line.
Any other comments about this particular document?
Sure. So does it mean that nifedipine for the midwives, they cannot use it for hypertensive? They can only use it for preterm? Did we limit it just for preterm and nothing else like high blood pressure?
So I might answer that. This is Midwives generally take care of low-risk patients. So if they have a patient that is high risk that needs ongoing antihypertensives, for example, that would be probably a patient that they're collaborating with somebody else with. So the scope of prescription extension is really to cover kind of all of the things that you would need in caring for sort of normal, low-risk, average patients.
Yeah,
hope that
but I
answers
was
the
wondering
question.
because
Yeah.
the rule is allowing them to use nifedipine as an emergency to prevent preterm while they are being transferred. So in a case where they are managing a patient, a normal patient, and suddenly that patient becomes hypertensive, while they're waiting to transfer the patient, are they not allowed to use any of this nifedipine or any of the medications while they're in the process of trying to transfer the patient to a higher acuity?
I think that's accurate. So if they're in a, if maybe what I don't know, I'm not sure I totally understand your question. So if there's somebody having a hypertensive emergency, would they be able to treat that? I don't think that's in the scope, but one of the midwives that are on the call might be able to tell us. I think this is if somebody comes in to triage in labor and you're trying to get them to a higher level of care, nursery hospital, for example, you might give them nifedipine.
There are some comments in the chat that I'm seeing.
And we do have a couple of hands raised. Hillary Norris, she's with the Washington State Medical Association. Hillary, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, hi, good morning. Just, yes, Hillary Norris with the Washington State Medical Association. And just wanted to state for the record that the WSMA is in support of this rule as written, and just appreciate getting to work with the Midwifery Advisory Committee and Midwives Association on this rule. So thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. And then Deborah, I'm going to butcher this name, Gleisner, I think, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, you did it perfectly. My name is Deborah Gleisner. I'm a licensed midwife. And to answer your question, no midwife is going to be using medication to manage hypertension, whether it is chronic or whether it is an acute case. If we have acute symptoms, we're sending people into the hospital in that moment. And if we have somebody who is trending upwards into gestational hypertension or preeclampsia, we're going to be transferring them into an OB care or a midwife in the hospital who can handle that with OB backup. So the use of nifedipine was purely for that preterm labor while we're trying to get them somewhere else.
Thank you. My questions were answered.
Are there any other comments or questions? Amelia, any more hands raised from the public?
Not that I see, no.
Anyone else in this meeting? Okay, then I will move on to the medical records guidance document, which is up for its 4-year review. There isn't any urgency to this discussion. The policy committee received some meaningful 11th hour feedback regarding the proposed editing suggestions, and it's recommending that we defer discussion of this document until the next business meeting. Deferring this will allow these proposed edits to be vetted using our new process, which was designed to help ensure that stakeholders are able to weigh in and that the policy committee has time to consider their input and put forward a document for discussion at the next meeting. Our new process regarding policy development as a review is discussion of proposed changes and concerns and feedback at the next interested parties meeting, which is scheduled for March 21st. Please, if you're interested, attend this meeting to provide your feedback. Input from that interested parties meeting will be summarized by the policy committee's staff attorney, Dr. Kohlmeyer, at the next policy meeting, which is scheduled for April 11th. And any revisions accepted by the policy committee will then be presented in our next business meeting packet for you to review before the committee meeting, which is scheduled for April 26th. Are there any other questions regarding the policy committee's recommendations to defer this until the next business meeting or about the new policy committee process in general?
Great job.
Do we need to take a formal vote on deferring it?
No, it's nothing to vote on.
Okay. Wonderful. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
I will thank my partner, Dr. Kohlmeyer, for the wonderful tag teaming that we have on this. So thank you, Dr. Kohlmeyer.
You're welcome. It's a collaborative process.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, with the conclusion of the policy committee report, we'd like to move on to member reports. Do any commissioners, if they wish to say any kind of reports or anything, please feel free to raise your hand and let us know what's going on with you and any of your reports. Again, I can't see everybody. Haven't seen any hands raised electronically, makes it easier. So seeing no commissioners wanting to do a report, we'll move on then to staff reports. And staff, thank you for your excellent job in summarizing what's going on in your areas. Please raise your hand if you'd like to tell us verbally to highlight any of these things regarding staff reports. Ms. Boyd.
I just have an addendum. I just want to remind all the commissioners that we will hold a session of the sexual misconduct trauma-informed training next month on the 15th. And if you have not attended in the past, we hope that you do attend. It's important that we that the commissioners attend this training so that we can continue our procedure for processing sexual misconduct cases. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you. Let me just say, I did have that training and I found it absolutely exceptional. I really learned quite a bit about it, and it's helped me view our complaints in a very different manner than I might have without that training. It was outstanding. Any other?
No, I just want to say I agree, Dr. Domino, and I'm actually attending again because the refresh is always very helpful.
Any other staff reports? I don't see all the staff. Well, seeing none, well, let's move on to the Attorney General's report. Ms. Garter, well, do you have a report to give us today?
No, I have nothing to report today. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, with that in mind, it looks like number 12. Oh, there's something, Kyle, Mr. Karenanen.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind folks that we are having an ECMT shortly after this meeting. So please, I know Chris Waterman said that we had 4 of you folks who were gracious enough to offer some of your time. So just a reminder, at 11 a.m. ECMT for those folks who have volunteered to spend some time with us this morning. In addition to this.
Kyle, do we use the same Teams site for that meeting? Do you know?
Sorry to, no, there is a separate invite and it is labeled ECMT. It is for 11 a.m. So not this team session, a separate team session, please.
All right. Well, with that, Happy New Year, everybody. Already moving along in 2024. And I'd like to adjourn the meeting. It says it's 10:35 a.m. on the Department of Health computer. Have a good few months. Stay warm. Hopefully the weather will normalize soon. And see you again, I think, in March. Bye.
See you in March. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.